Welcome to Heartbreak Chronicles. Raindrops tapped on the windows as wintertime Alberta, Canada, was welcoming Friday dusk in its usual way. Petroleum engineer Lachlan Campbell returns home from a busy day at work, and an unusual silence greets him as he pushes open the door. "Mia? Eliza?" he called, placing the key in a small bowl in the foyer. No response. There's usually a note from Mia on the fridge telling him where dinner is or where she took Eliza. Today, there was only a note on the refrigerator door in his wife's scrawled handwriting. "I need time to think about my life. I'll be back in a few years. Took Eliza to Vancouver. Don't look for us." Lachlan's world fell apart in that moment. He rushes to the bedroom and pulls open the closet door. Mia's clothes are gone. He ran to Eliza's room. Her favorite teddy bear and a few pieces of clothing were gone, but the rest of her things were still in place, as if she expected to return soon. Shaking, he took out his cell phone and dialed Mia's number. Goes directly to voicemail. He texted her, then emailed. No response. He contacted Mia's friend Natalie, who was evasive and said she didn't know the specifics, but that Mia had mentioned the need for change. Lachlan sits on a cot in her daughter's room, cuddling the stuffed bunny she left behind, trying to make sense of how it all happened. They had problems in their marriage. Yes, what marriage doesn't? But to leave like that without saying goodbye and take their 7-year-old daughter? He couldn't imagine Mia doing such a thing. Outside, the Alberta blizzard began to intensify, like the storm brewing inside him. Back 6 years ago, Lachlan Campbell came to work in Fort McMurray, Alberta, the center of Canada's oil sands industry. As a promising petroleum engineer, he joined the Horizon Oil Sands project to optimize the extraction process. Work was busy, but it was never the whole of his life. He met Mia Reynolds, a teacher at a local elementary school for children of oil field workers, at a community event organized by the company. With her warm smile and bright green eyes, Mia's energy and love of life immediately appealed to Lachlan. "So you're the new engineer from back east?" she asked, a mischievous glint in her eye. "I've been told you haven't experienced a true northern winter." "I'm from Nova Scotia, where the winters aren't exactly gentle." Lachlan smiled. "But not Fort McMurray winters," Mia said with a laugh. "Winters here test everyone's will." Their relationship is growing fast. Mia loves the outdoors, even in the cold northern winters. On weekends, when Lachlan isn't working a shift, they go snowshoe hiking or ice skating on the frozen river. Mia showed him all the hidden beauties of the town. Less than a year later, they were married, in a small chapel surrounded by pine trees, attended only by close friends and family. 2 years later, their daughter Eliza was born, with Mia's green eyes and Lachlan's stubborn streak. Life looks perfect and happy. Lachlan had a steady job with a good salary, enough to buy them a comfortable house in Fort McMurray. He works a 7-to-7 shift, 7 days in a row and then 7 days off, which allows him to spend a lot of time with his family. Nonetheless, when Eliza was 5 years old, some subtle changes began to appear. Mia started complaining about the restrictions in Fort McMurray. "This place is so small," she said one night, tapping her fingers on the kitchen counter. "Same faces, same activities, same everything. There's no change, no excitement, no room to move forward." Lachlan understands how she feels. Fort McMurray is really an industrial town, centered mostly around the oil sands industry, with limited cultural life. But he also saw the value of the place, the strong community ties, the proximity of nature, and the financial stability it provided for their families. "I wondered if I could change careers," Mia said. "Teaching was rewarding, but I felt stuck where I was." Lachlan supported her in finding a new direction. When Mia suggested she wanted to use her teaching background to move into corporate training, he encouraged her to try it. She was offered a position with a company that provides safety and communication training to oil companies. The new job required her to travel to Edmonton and Calgary occasionally. At first, the change seemed to revitalize Mia. She is passionate about her work and often shares with Lachlan the interesting people she meets and the new knowledge she learns during her workshops. But over time, Lachlan noticed subtle changes. Mia began to be vague about her travel schedule. She buys new clothes and pays more attention to her appearance. She always stares at her phone and quickly locks the screen when he approaches. When he asked about the changes, Mia always had a reasonable explanation. The corporate world is more image conscious, she explains, and I need to look professional. About the cell phone, she said it was just work emails and messages. If Lachlan had been more alert, maybe he would have noticed other signs. How do we explain the sudden extension of those seminars? How do you explain all those nights when she claimed to be out with coworkers and came home late? Or the new perfume she kept in her dresser drawer, a brand he never gave her? But Lachlan trusts his wife. When doubts occasionally arose, he would drive them away as mere paranoid thoughts on his part. Now, faced with an empty closet and a cold note, he finally realized he had missed too many signs. 3 months ago, Mia attended a 3-day corporate training workshop in Calgary. It was there that she met Vance Whitaker. As Mia walked into the hotel conference room to prepare her presentation materials, a tall man was adjusting the projector. "Technical problems?" she asked, putting down her materials and walking over. He turned and gave a charming smile. "Nothing I can't fix." He held out his hand. "Vance Whitaker, investment advisor. Today I'll cover financial planning and portfolio diversification." Mia Campbell, communication and safety training, she replied, feeling the confidence in his handshake. Vance isn't like the rough-and-tumble workers of the oil fields, nor is she as pragmatic as her husband. He wore a tailored suit and spoke with a cosmopolitan confidence. On his lunch break, he sat next to her and talked about the Vancouver art scene and his travels around the world. "Fort McMurray must be very interesting," he said politely, "but someone as talented as you shouldn't be buried there." The words touched a certain chord in her heart. Vance sees the part of her that feels neglected, her ambition, her desire for a wider world. At the end of the seminar, they exchanged contact information, just professional exchanges. But soon the message turned into a lunch date, then a dinner in Calgary whenever she was traveling. Vance painted a tantalizing picture for her, opening a consulting firm in Vancouver specializing in training for tech companies. He has contacts, experience, and clients. He just needed a partner with an educational background and fresh perspective like hers. "Imagine," he said on a dinner date, "making money from creativity, reaching out to real influencers, living in a cultured, vibrant city. No more long winters, no more smell of tar sands, no more never-ending life of the same." Mia was mesmerized by the vision. Every interaction with Vance makes her feel smarter and more attractive. He appreciated her ideas and valued her point of view, something she had grown to feel was missing at home. When Vance finally suggests that she should leave Fort McMurray and start a new life with him in Vancouver, the idea has been percolating in her mind for weeks. "But what about Lachlan and Eliza?" she asked, though a plan was beginning to form in her mind. "Bring Eliza," Vance said. "Vancouver has the best schools, the best opportunities. As for Lachlan," he paused, "sometimes we have to make hard choices for our own happiness." The decision to leave was not an impulse, but one that slowly took shape in Mia's mind. She convinces herself it's for Eliza's future, for her own career advancement, and maybe even ultimately for Lachlan's benefit. He'll find someone for him in Fort McMurray, someone who appreciates that lifestyle more. She planned everything carefully. Vance helped her rent an apartment in Vancouver. She unpacked on her first day away from Lachlan's shift work and packed her and Eliza's essentials. "Are we going on a trip, Mom?" Eliza asked, watching her mom stuff her favorite teddy bear into her backpack. "In a sense, yes, dear," Mia replied. "A new adventure." "Is Daddy going too?" Mia stopped what she was doing and swallowed hard. "No, Dad needs to work here. We'll see him again later." When she wrote the note she left for Lachlan, she told herself it was the kindest way to go. No arguments, no tears, no painful confrontations. It's just a dry cutoff that allows everyone to move on. She's not even giving up completely. She did right that she'd be back. She just needed time to explore the opportunity and see if it would work. She didn't mention Vance. That would be cruel. Maybe one day, when the dust settles, she'll explain herself. But for now, plain and simple seems best. As she and Eliza left their Fort McMurray home and drove to Vancouver, Mia felt a rush of mixed emotions: relief, excitement, guilt, and a touch of fear. But Vance had promised that everything would be okay. This is the chance she deserves. She took one last look at the house in the rearview mirror and then headed for the highway and what she assumed would be a brighter future. Lachlan's first reaction was utter panic. His wife and daughter have disappeared, leaving only a vague note. He called the police, but when they saw the note, they dismissed it as a domestic dispute rather than a kidnapping. Sir, she made it clear that she took the child and would return, the young officer said. Legally, this is a custody dispute, not a criminal case. Lachlan contacted everyone he could think of: Mia's friends, her co-workers, even her parents in Ontario. Most people expressed surprise, but no one seemed to know the exact details. Or they don't want to tell him. A week later, Mia's boss revealed that she had resigned, citing personal reasons. Her last training was at a workshop in Calgary. Lachlan drove to Calgary and visited the hotel where the workshop was held. After presenting Mia's photo and stating that she was the worried husband, a sympathetic receptionist examined the records. Yes, Ms. Campbell did attend the seminar, she confirmed, and she and Mr. Whitaker seemed to know each other well. Mr. Whitaker? Vance Whitaker, one of the speakers. Investment advisor. They've had dinner together a couple times. The receptionist hesitated, seeming to realize that she might have said too much. It was the first time Lachlan had heard the name, but it wouldn't be the last. He hires a private investigator, a retired police officer who tracks Mia's movements in Vancouver. The PI discovers that Mia and Eliza live in a downtown apartment building that Vance Whitaker frequents. The photos show them eating together and walking down the street, holding hands like a couple. What's even more heartbreaking is that there are photos of Eliza holding Vance's hand and seemingly accepting this new man's role in her life. Lachlan's grief shifted to anger and then a calm resolve. He contacted an attorney and learned about his rights and options. You have a couple of options, the attorney explained. You can file for emergency custody and force her to take the kids back, or you can give her time while you build a legal case. Lachlan decided to act strategically. Direct conflict can lead to more harm than good, especially for Eliza. Instead, he began gathering evidence, documenting this abandonment, and preparing for a possible custody battle. At the same time, he has to face the shattering reality of everyday life. At the firm, he requested that his shifts be adjusted so that he could handle legal matters when needed. His co-workers sympathize, but he knows gossip spreads quickly in this town. He's the one who was abandoned by his wife, the one who couldn't even keep his own marriage together. The hardest part was the night, when he was alone in the house that was once filled with laughter. Eliza's room stays as it is, awaiting her return. Sometimes he would sit on her bed and read her favorite storybook as if she could hear it. In his darkest moments, he'd imagine Mia's life with this Vance, how she'd thrown away everything they'd built together. These thoughts can trigger a burst of uncontrollable anger. But each time, he forced himself to calm down and focus on his next move. If Mia wants to leave, that's her choice. But taking away his daughter, stripping him of his role as a father? This was unacceptable to him. No matter what, he's going to show Eliza that he loves her and fights for her. As for Mia and her new boyfriend, they will face the consequences of their actions. He'll make sure of it. Life in Vancouver didn't go as well as Mia expected. Vance does have business relationships and clients, but the company he promised is slow to deliver. It takes time, honey, he'd say. And building a business like this doesn't happen overnight. We need the right connections, the right timing. For the first few months, Mia was patient with this. Vance provides financial support for her and Eliza, who live in a cozy apartment in the middle of a vibrant city. Eliza is placed in a private school, although she often asks about her dad. When will Daddy come to see us? She'll ask. Daddy's busy, honey, Mia replied. And Fort McMurray is a long way from here. Can we go back and see him? Not now, dear. Now we have a new life here. As time goes on, the questions become harder and harder to answer. Meanwhile, Mia notices subtle changes in Vance's behavior. He started coming home late and was vague about where he was going. He became overzealous about investment opportunities, always talking about the big break that was coming. She noticed that he had received letters from debt collectors, but just laughed it off. 6 months later, Mia is forced to face reality head-on. Their consulting firm has almost no clients, and Vance's investment opportunities are looking more and more like high-risk gambles. The romance between them also began to fade, and arguments became more frequent as financial pressures increased. You said you had clients, Mia accused in a heated argument. The market changes, Vance countered, and you have to be patient. My savings are almost gone and Eliza needs stability. If you don't believe me, maybe you should go back to your petroleum engineer and that boring town. These words stung Mia, but she couldn't deny the doubts in her mind. She decided to try to find work independently, utilizing her teaching and training experience. She found a position with a training company, but the pay was nowhere near what she was earning in Fort McMurray and not enough to cover the cost of living in Vancouver. Meanwhile, Vance's financial problems were getting worse. He started borrowing money from her, always with various excuses. A year later, when the lease expired, they were forced to move to a smaller apartment. Private school was no longer an option, and Eliza was transferred to public school, which once again caused her to experience difficulty adjusting. The final blow came when Vance came home drunk one night and admitted he had large gambling debts. "Just a temporary setback," he said vaguely. "I have a new plan." Watching this once confident man now become a mess, Mia finally realizes the mistake she made. She left a loving husband and a stable life to follow a dream that ultimately proved hollow. Worse, she saw what it did to Eliza. Her daughter became quiet and withdrawn, her grades dropped, and she had few friends. No matter how much Mia tries to explain it, Eliza can't understand why they left their dad and why their lives have become so unstable. Mia begins to think about the unthinkable, returning to Fort McMurray and facing the chaos she created when she left. Will Lachlan ever forgive her? Did she have the right to expect forgiveness from him? These issues became more pressing when she received a letter from the Alberta court. The letter was a legal notice regarding divorce and custody. Lachlan not only filed a petition for divorce, but also sought primary custody of Eliza, citing abandonment. Attached to the court notice were copies of the evidence, photographs of her note, the private investigator's report, photographs of her and Vance, and a timeline detailing how she took Eliza out of the province without Lachlan's consent. Mia reads the cold legal documents and realizes that Lachlan isn't just sitting around waiting for her to come back. He's been preparing for a possible end. Her departure was not a temporary adventure. In the eyes of the law, it was abandonment of her family, a serious act for which she was responsible. Later that night, Vance came home drunk again and began discussing another business plan. Mia finally makes up her mind when he offers to borrow her credit card. "Enough," she said. "Eliza and I are going back to Fort McMurray." Vance smiled, that confident smile that used to fascinate her now looking hollow and piercing. "He won't want you back, you know. You left him. He has filed for divorce." "That's what I have to deal with," Mia replied. "But I can't go on with this life. Eliza needs stability, and she needs her father." Vance's smile disappeared. "What about me? I need you." Mia looked at this man, once so fascinating to her, now so strange. "No, you don't. You never really needed me. You just need someone to pay for your daydreams." As she and Eliza pack their bags to return to Fort McMurray, Mia remembers the promise on the note she left for Lachlan. "I'll be back in a few years." She just hoped it wasn't too late. Lachlan Campbell's life has changed forever in the last 2 years. The first few months after Mia left were hellish. He went through all the emotional stages: shock, denial, anger, sadness. He can't sleep at night because he misses Eliza and is angry at Mia's betrayal. But over time, the anger slowly transformed into a calm resolve. If Mia chooses another man and another life, then she must face the full consequences of that choice. His attorney helped him understand the law on malicious abandonment and what it means for divorce and custody. The private investigator keeps him regularly informed of Mia and Eliza's situation in Vancouver. He learned that Vance Whitaker had a poor financial record and a history of problem gambling. He's seen them move from luxury downtown apartments to lesser neighborhoods, seen Eliza get transferred. Each piece of information reinforced his conviction that he was on the right path. The divorce proceedings are progressing slowly but steadily. Canadian law requires couples to live apart for at least 1 year before a divorce can be finalized. Lachlan waited patiently while building a strong case that Mia's behavior constituted abandonment. In the meantime, he sought a custody arrangement that would allow him to maintain contact with Eliza. The court granted him visitation rights, once a month, which could take place in Vancouver given the distance factor. He had to overcome a great pride barrier to send a message to Mia requesting to see his daughter, whom the woman had taken without his consent. But he was willing to endure the humiliation for Eliza's sake. The first visitation took place in a park in Vancouver with a social worker present. Lachlan's heart nearly broke when he saw Eliza running toward him. Dad, she cried out, flinging herself into his arms. I missed you. Why don't you come and live with us in Vancouver? He noticed she had gotten thinner, and there were tired shadows under her eyes. Fighting back tears, he replied, Daddy's job is in Fort McMurray, honey, but I'll come to see you as often as I can. He carefully avoids criticizing Mia or mentioning Vance. Regardless of how he feels about Mia, he won't disparage her mother in front of Eliza. As he visited month after month, he noticed a change in Eliza. She became quieter and smiled less. When he gently inquired about her new life, she would equivocate. She mentions moving and changing schools, but never complains. How's Uncle Vance? He asked at one point, careful to control his tone. Eliza frowned. He and his mom are always arguing about money. He doesn't take us out like he used to. Lachlan silently notes this information to add to the case he is building. In the meantime, he began to rebuild his life. He bought a new couch, repainted the house, bought new bedding for Eliza's room, and waited for her possible return. He accepts his co-workers' encouragement to go on dates, though these attempts are often awkward and short-lived. No one can fill the void Mia leaves behind, but he slowly comes to terms with being alone. He felt a strange sense of relief when he received notice from the court that the divorce petition had been granted and he had been awarded joint custody of Eliza. While he never thought his marriage would end this way, at least now there was clarity and a way forward. The court ordered Mia to pay a portion of Eliza's support and established a more formal visitation arrangement. Lachlan's attorneys say it's a victory. He was granted more rights than he normally would have been given the distance factor. When he receives a call out of the blue from Mia that she and Eliza are returning to Fort McMurray, Lachlan is ready for the day. We need to talk, she said over the phone, a vulnerability in her voice he'd never heard before. About Eliza, about everything. Yes, we need to talk, he replied calmly, but not in the way you think. Fort McMurray is still just as Mia remembers it. Wide streets, well-arranged houses, oil sands facilities forever visible in the distance. But as she drove through the town, a strong sense of strangeness hit her. A little over 2 years is enough time for some stores to close, new ones to open, people to move out, and new faces to appear. More importantly, she no longer belonged here. The familiar faces that had once smiled and waved at her now cast scrutinizing glances. Word traveled fast through the town. No doubt everyone knew that Mia Campbell had left her husband with her daughter and was now back. That's my school. Eliza shouted from the back seat, pointing out the window and seeing the elementary school she used to go to. Yes, dear, Mia said, feeling a pang of guilt. Eliza's 2 years in Vancouver were not easy for her. New school, new friends, then a move and another transfer. Mia hopes that returning to familiar surroundings will bring some stability to her daughter. They stayed temporarily at a motel in town, and Mia was disturbed by Lachlan's reaction on the phone. He sounds so indifference, not like the warm, forgiving man she remembered. Is Lachlan coming to see us? Eliza asked, jumping excitedly on the motel bed. Yes, tomorrow, Mia replied. He said he'd pick you up and take you out all day. Just the two of us? Won't you come along? Mia shook her head. No, honey, Daddy wants to be alone with you. I'll be here when you get back. The next morning, when Lachlan's truck pulls up outside the motel, Eliza rushes out. Mia stood in the doorway, unsure of how to greet her. He looked almost unchanged. Maybe there were more silver strands in his hair and deeper lines in his face, but it was still the same man she had once loved. Lachlan, she whispered. He nodded briefly, his full attention on Eliza. Ready for a full day of adventure, pumpkin? Ready, Eliza exclaimed happily, completely oblivious to the tension between her parents. We'll be back before dinner, Lachlan said to Mia, his tone calm and distant. When they leave, Mia is left alone with her thoughts and regrets. In the evening, Eliza returns excitedly recounting her day with her dad. They went to her favorite ice cream store, toured the new community center, and even went to see Lachlan's house. My room is still there, she said happily. Daddy says that will always be my place. He bought me new sheets with unicorns on them. Mia tries to act happy, but Eliza's words sting her. Lachlan kept Eliza's room, which, of course, is exactly what he would have done. And she takes Eliza to live in a stranger's apartment, moving her luggage from place to place. Dad said we could continue talking about future arrangements tomorrow, Eliza continued. And he said he'd call you. The next morning, Lachlan did call, but it wasn't the kind of conversation Mia was expecting. "I've spoken with my attorney," he said, his tone formal, "and we need to discuss custody arrangements, now that you're back in Fort McMurray." "Lawyer?" Mia asked in surprise. "Lachlan, I thought we could talk about this like civilized people." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line, then a short laugh. "As civilized as you were when you left? Leave a note, take my daughter, and not tell me where you went." Mia cringed. "I know I made a mistake. That's why I'm back." "You came back because Vance Whitaker was in debt and your business plan failed?" Lachlan said. "Not because you suddenly cared about my feelings." Mia sucked in a breath. "How does he know all this?" "I'll see you at the Brewster's Cafe, 2 p.m., he continued, "with your attorney's contact information." When Mia arrived at the cafe at the appointed time, Lachlan was already there, sitting at a table in the corner. He had a folder in front of him. The cafe was quiet and familiar, where they had spent countless weekend mornings together over the years, sharing coffee and plans. "Thanks for seeing me," she said, sliding into the seat across from her. Lachlan got right to the point. "I'd like to clarify your current expectations." "I wish we could start over," Mia said, a plea in her voice. "I made a terrible mistake following Vance. I realized what I had and how I was destroying it." "I'm not asking about your emotional state," Lachlan interrupted her. "I'm asking about your expectations of the legal arrangement." "Legal arrangements?" Lachlan opens the folder and removes a file. "We're divorced, Mia. The program was completed 6 months ago." Mia felt a wave of vertigo. She knew he had filed for divorce, but in her imagination the process would have been longer and there would have been more opportunities to stop it. "By court order," he continued, "we have joint custody of Eliza, but primary custody goes to me. The court finds that your behavior constitutes abandonment." He slid the papers to her. "These are official legal documents. I suggest you read it carefully and then consult your own attorney." Mia looked down at the papers, tears blurring her vision. On it was the judge's signature and a seal she had never seen before. It's true. Her marriage is officially over. To make matters worse, the court has found her unfit to be Eliza's primary guardian. "You planned this," she whispered, looking up at Lachlan. "No, Mia," he replied, his voice quiet but firm. "You planned all of this when you decided to take my daughter away and not tell me where you went." "I'm just protecting my interests and Eliza's." "What do you mean?" "Meaning, when you wrote, 'I'll be back in a few years,' you obviously didn't expect me to be waiting for you. You expect me to forgive everything and accept your decision to take Eliza. But you don't have the right to make decisions like that. She's my daughter too." "I know I made a mistake," Mia said again, her voice breaking. "Yes, you made a mistake," Lachlan agreed. "But mistakes have consequences, Mia. You can't expect everything to go back to the way it was after hurting someone. That's not how the world works." He pulled another folder out of his bag. "Here's what I've gathered about you and Vance. Private investigators report, credit history, his past business failures. If you want to know why I'm so sure you came back because of money and not because of love, here's all the proof." Mia watched dumbfounded as Lachlan produced evidence piece by piece. Photos of her and Vance at the restaurant, copies of their lease, even records of Vance's gambling debts. "You've been spying on us." "I have been protecting my daughter and my legal rights," Lachlan corrected. "And I need evidence that your decision to leave was not just temporary, but deliberate abandonment." "I didn't abandon her," Mia protested, tears in her eyes. "The court disagrees," Lachlan said simply. "And your behavior is considered malicious abandonment. You took her out of the province without my consent. You cut off all channels of communication. You gave no information about where you were going. All of this constitutes abandonment in the eyes of the law." Mia sat there, tears streaming down her face, digesting the information. She never thought Lachlan would be so organized and prepared. She remembers him as more emotional, more forgiving. "What about now?" she finally asked. "Now, we follow the court's order. You have visitation rights and I have primary custody. If you want to settle in Fort McMurray and build a relationship with Eliza, I won't stop you. But her home will continue to be my house, and her regular life will continue to be centered around me." "You hate me," Mia said calmly. "No," Lachlan said, the first hint of softness in his voice. "I don't hate you. I loved you once, very deeply. But you betrayed that love, Mia. You chose a stranger over your family. You chose your own desires over your duty to your daughter. I don't hate you, but I don't trust you anymore. He stood up and gathered his papers. I just want to make sure we understand each other's positions. Legal decisions have been taken. We can work together on that basis, looking out for Eliza's best interests, or we can keep fighting. The choice is yours. But no matter what, things will never return to the way they were before you left. That life doesn't exist anymore. When he left the cafe, Mia sat there feeling a helplessness she had never felt before. She came back to Fort McMurray to start over, to make amends. But it seems it's too late. The next few weeks were a difficult adjustment period for Mia. She found a job in town as a substitute elementary school teacher, rented a small apartment, and began to establish a new daily routine. Under the custodial arrangement, Eliza lives primarily with Lachlan, but spends 3 nights a week and every other weekend with Mia. It was less than she had hoped for, but more than she had feared. The most difficult part is the community response. Fort McMurray is a small town, and people have long memories. Her former friends remain polite but distant towards her. At school, other teachers would stop talking when she walked into the teacher's lounge. In the store, she would notice whispers and sideways glances. That's Mrs. Campbell, leaving her husband and daughter and coming back. I heard she ran off with some investment scammer and spent all her money. Poor Lachlan, always a good man and didn't deserve this. Mia held her head high and continued on her way. She knows she deserves these judgments. Her choices hurt a lot of people, most of all Eliza. Now she must accept the consequences and try to rebuild. The hardest part was seeing how Eliza adapted to this divided life. The girl coped well on the surface and seemed to understand that she would be traveling back and forth between the two families. But sometimes, Mia notices a hesitation, an uncertainty, when Eliza isn't sure which parent should be told something or which rules apply to which home. Unsurprisingly, Lachlan is a model father. He never spoke ill of Mia in front of Eliza, was always on time for pickup and drop-off, and maintained communication with Mia about school and activities. But their interactions remained stiff and formal. The warmth and closeness between them was gone. One day, when Mia goes to pick up Eliza from Lachlan's house for the weekend, she overhears their conversation. "But wouldn't it be easier if Mom lived with us?" Eliza asked, childlike logic in her voice. "Just like old times." Lachlan is silent for a moment, then replies in a soft but firm voice, "Sometimes, dear, adults make choices that change the way we live our lives. Your mom and I live separately now, but we both love you very much. 2 homes are a little more complicated than one, but that doesn't mean you get less love. Is it because Mommy's with Uncle Vance?" Another silence. "Partly yes, but relationships are complicated, honey. The important thing is that we're both here now and both love you." Mia felt a stab of pain when she heard those words. Lachlan could have blamed her and told Eliza it was all her fault, but he didn't. Even after her biggest mistake, he still looks out for his daughter. One Saturday, while Eliza and Mia are at the park, they run into Natalie, an old friend of Mia's and one of the few people who knows about Mia's relationship with Vance. "It's been a long time," Natalie greeted stiffly, her 2 children playing nearby. "Eliza, why don't you go play at the swing set for a while?" Mia suggested, and the girl ran off. "So, you're back," Natalie said, judgment evident in her voice. "Yes," Mia replied. "I made a mistake." "A mistake?" Natalie raised an eyebrow. "You abandoned your husband and children to follow a man you barely knew." "That's not a mistake, Mia, that's betrayal." Mia cringed. "I know. I regret it every day. Does Lachlan know you contacted me and asked me not to tell him about Vance? Does he know you were planning this weeks before you left?" Mia looked up in shock. "You told him?" "Of course I told him," Natalie said. "He's a friend of mine and his heart is broken. He has a right to know the truth." It all makes sense now, why Lachlan was able to get to the PI so quickly, so sure that she was involved with Vance. Natalie gave him the clue. "You should have faced your problems head on," Natalie continued. "If you were unhappy, you should have talked to Lachlan, sought counseling, done anything instead of running away. You know what a good man he is." "I know," Mia whispered, tears gathering in her eyes. "I just lost. Vance makes everything look easy and perfect. And now that you're back, expect everything to be okay?" "No," Mia shook her head. "I don't expect anything to be easy. I'm just trying to do what's right for Eliza the best I can." Natalie's expression softened a little. At least it's a start. But you have to realize that you've hurt a lot of people, Mia. It's not just Lachlan and Eliza. This community used to consider you family. Trust takes time to rebuild, if it can be rebuilt at all. As the weeks pass, Mia strives to do the right thing. She pays her court-ordered support on time, never misses a date with Eliza, and supports Lachlan's parenting decisions whenever possible. She attends Eliza's school functions, even if it means enduring the stares of other parents. Slowly, little by little, things became less tense. She and Lachlan develop a polite way of coexisting that focuses on Eliza's needs. They weren't friends and may never be again, but they found a way to coexist in a civilized way. But deep down, Mia knows that she can never fully atone for her behavior. Trust, once broken, is like a shattered mirror. It can be repaired but will never be as whole as it was. Her betrayal of Lachlan, her marriage vows, and Eliza's childhood have left permanent scars. She begins to understand a harsh truth. Some mistakes cannot be forgiven, only accepted. Her departure created ripples that forever changed the course of all their lives. Now they must find a way to move forward in this new reality, armed with the lessons of the past, but not defined by them. Lachlan Campbell has never been one to hold a grudge. In his family, forgiveness was seen as a virtue and resentment as a burden. But when he's confronted with the reality of Mia's return, he realizes that forgiveness is harder than he thought. He had imagined her return countless times in the days following her departure. In some versions, he angrily rejects her. In others, he forgives her and they rebuild their family. But reality is more complicated than any imagination. He couldn't deny that it was good to see her reconnect with Eliza. Despite everything, Eliza still needs her mother. It was comforting to see his daughter begin to radiate a renewed sense of ease and joy that she had been missing for the past few years. But every time he sees Mia, he remembers the note, the empty closets, and the long, lonely nights wondering where his daughter is. He remembers seeing the private investigator's photos of Mia and Vance holding hands, the three of them together, like a happy new family. These memories cannot be easily erased. Sometimes, when he sees Mia struggling to get a foothold in town, he almost feels sympathy when he sees how the others treat her. Almost. Then he'd remember how easily she'd left, how she'd planned it all, and he'd known nothing about it. One rainy Friday night, while Eliza spends the night at Mia's, Lachlan meets up with friends at a local bar. After a few beers, the conversation turned to Mia's return. "I don't know how you did it, man," said his friend Connor. "If it was me, I'd make her pay." "She's paid her dues," Lachlan replied, "and the legal system makes sure of it." "Yeah, but she's still here, isn't she? In your town, with your kids. How can you stand to see her?" Lachlan considered this. "Because it happened. I can't change the past. I can only decide how to respond to the present. It's better for Eliza to have two parents who get along than two parents who hate each other." "You're always so rational," Connor sighed. "I can't do it." But reason is Lachlan's defense mechanism, the armor he's built up over the years. Beneath the surface, he's still dealing with the pain of betrayal, the loss of trust, and the kind of shock that comes from having thought you knew someone, only to realize you were completely wrong. A few days later, he meets Mia at the supermarket. They nodded politely in greeting and then continued shopping. But as he turned a corner, he heard two women talking. "Look, that's Mrs. Campbell, the one who left her husband. Now she's back as if nothing happened. Shame on you." Lachlan turned to see Mia standing there with a pained expression on her face. She had obviously heard the words. Her shopping basket fell to the floor and oranges rolled everywhere. Without thinking, he walked over. "Mia, I was looking for you. Eliza wants to know if she can make it to the swim party on Saturday." Giving him a grateful look, Mia nodded and knelt down to start picking up oranges. Lachlan helped her pick it up with her, and out of the corner of his eye he caught the two gossiping women hurrying away. "Thanks," Mia whispered. "You didn't have to do that." "I know," he replied, handing her the last of the oranges. "But people in this town get too involved in other people's business sometimes. I don't like gossip, no matter who it's about." They stood there for a moment of awkwardness. "So, about Saturday?" Mia asked. "Oh, that," Lachlan said, "is true. Eliza's friend Dana is having a pool party for her birthday. Sure, she can go. I'll make sure she brings her bathing suit." As they each turned away, Lachlan felt a strange loosening, like the ice beginning to melt. It's not forgiveness, or even acceptance. but perhaps a small step towards some kind of new normal. As the months pass, they develop a cautious partnership with Eliza's interests at heart. It was far from perfect and still strained at times, but it worked. Then an unexpected event upsets the fragile balance. Eliza fell at school and broke her wrist. The school couldn't reach Lachlan, who was at a meeting where he couldn't answer his phone, so they called Mia. She immediately rushed to the school and took Eliza to the hospital. Lachlan didn't learn of the incident until hours later, and when he rushed to the hospital, he found Mia sitting next to Eliza's bed, who was tired but in good shape with her wrist in a cast. "Dad," Eliza shouted, "look at my cast. The doctor said I was brave." "You certainly were brave," he said, kissing her forehead before turning to Mia. "I'm sorry I missed your call." "What happened?" "An accident on the playground," Mia explained. "She fell off the monkey bars. The doctor said it's a simple fracture that should heal in 6 weeks." "Thank you for taking care of her," Lachlan said sincerely. Mia looked surprised. "She's my daughter. Of course I'll take care of her." It was at that moment that Lachlan realized that no matter how many mistakes Mia made, no matter how much she hurt him, she still loved Eliza. This love may not be enough to make up for her behavior, but it is real. Later that night, as Eliza settles down to rest, Lachlan and Mia sit in the hospital cafe. "The doctors say she'll make a full recovery," Mia said, breaking the silence. "With no complications." Lachlan nodded, then said, "You know, when the school called to tell me what had happened and that you'd taken care of everything, my first feeling was gratitude, not jealousy or worry. Maybe this is some kind of progress." Mia smiled slightly. "Maybe." They sipped their coffee in silence, but it was a different kind of silence. Less tense, less full of unspoken accusations. "I'll always regret what I did," Mia snapped. "Leaving you, taking Eliza, looking for something I'm not even sure what." Lachlan takes a deep breath. "I've spent a long time thinking about this. Why did you leave? What could I have done differently? But ultimately, that's your choice, Mia. You must take responsibility for your choices." "I know," she said calmly. "I'm responsible for that every day. Seeing you and Eliza so close, knowing that I missed so much, knowing that I'll never get that lost time back. That's my punishment." Lachlan didn't contradict her. There's no need. He used to think that revenge would satisfy him, but now he realizes that true justice is not about punishment, but about everyone facing the natural consequences of their actions. "We can't change the past," he said, "but maybe we can create a better future for Eliza. Not as a couple, but as 2 loving parents." "I'm willing to try," Mia said, her voice laced with her unexpressed remorse. As they sit there in the bright lights of the hospital, 2 people who once loved each other but are now strangers, Lachlan wonders if it's possible to find a new way to move forward, not together, but not as enemies, either. Eliza is very sensitive to changes in her parents' interactions. She noticed the little things, how they could talk in the same room without creating tension, how they could sit next to each other at her school functions, and even how her father stopped frowning at the mention of her mother's name. For 10-year-old Eliza, these are signs of hope. Although she had accepted that her parents would not be back together, it comforted her to see that they were able to be friendly. "Mommy," she asked one night when Mia was reading her a bedtime story, "are you sorry you left Daddy?" Mia put the book down and considered the question carefully. She had promised herself she would never lie to her daughter, even if it was the hard truth. "Yes, my dear, I regret it. That was one of the biggest mistakes of my life." "Then why did you leave then?" "That's a much harder question to answer. How do you explain the complexity of adult relationships to a child? How do you explain that sense of inadequacy, that urge for more, that need to be seen and appreciated?" "Sometimes," Mia said slowly, "adults make bad choices because they think the grass is greener on the other side of the lawn. They can't see the good things they already have. I thought leaving here and going to Vancouver would make me happier, but I was wrong. The most important thing is not where I live, but who I'm with. No matter what, you and Dad will always be the most important people in my life." Eliza thought for a moment. "Does Uncle Vance make you feel special?" Mia was amazed at her daughter's insight. "Yes, at first, but that feeling didn't last. The real specialness comes from those who love you on good days and bad, those who know the real you and still choose to stay." "Like Dad." "Yes," Mia said softly, feeling a pang of deep remorse. "Like your father. He's a very nice man, Eliza. All the time." Then why can't you be with dad again? If you regret leaving and he's a good man? Children's logic is so simple, so direct. But life is rarely that simple. Because sometimes, when we break certain things, they can't be fixed. Trust is like a fine vase. Once it shatters, even if you glue the pieces back together, it will never be the same as it was. Your father doesn't trust me in that way anymore, and he has good reason to. Eliza was quiet for a moment, digesting the information. But he doesn't hate you. I can tell. No, I don't think he hates me, Mia agreed. And that's more than I deserve. A few days later, it was Lachlan's turn to pick Eliza up from school. As they walked home, Eliza asked the same question. Daddy, do you hate Mommy? Lachlan stopped and looked at his daughter. No, Eliza, I don't hate Mom. Why do you ask? Because she hurt you. She left us. Lachlan crouched down and leveled with his daughter. Look, Pumpkin, adult relationships are complicated. Yes, Mom's choices hurt us, but it takes a lot of energy to hate someone else, and I'd rather spend that energy loving you. But you can't forgive her? That's a much harder question to answer. Lachlan thought for a moment. Forgiveness takes time, sometimes a long time. I'm learning how to forgive a little bit a day. Eliza nodded, seemingly satisfied with the answer. I think she's really upset, Dad. She cries sometimes, when she thinks I don't see it. Lachlan felt a rush of mixed emotions, sympathy, sadness, and perhaps a hint of relief, knowing that Mia did feel the weight of her actions. Mom made bad choices, but she loves you very much. That's the most important thing, okay? In the fall, the school held its annual Thanksgiving dinner where parents and children gathered to share food and give thanks. In the past, Mia and Lachlan have always attended events like this together. This year, they each received invitations, but both plan to attend. When they meet at Eliza's table, the atmosphere is a little awkward. But for the sake of their daughter, they all try to remain friendly. Dinner went well until the event ended, and they walked to the parking lot together. I have something for you, Mia said suddenly, pulling an envelope from her bag. This is what Vance owes you. I know it's not nearly enough to make up for all we've done, but it's a start. I've been saving and taking a portion of every paycheck I get. Lachlan looked at the envelope in confusion. I don't get it. What does Vance owe me? When I left, I withdrew money from our joint account. That money was supposed to go to Eliza's college fund. Vance convinced me that I deserved it, but it wasn't right. It's our joint money. It's for Eliza's future. I want to give it back to you, with interest. Lachlan took the envelope slowly, feeling its weight, not only the physical weight, but what it represented. This is a concrete action by Mia to acknowledge her mistake and try to make amends. Thanks, he said simply. I'll put it back in Eliza's fund. They stood in silence as the families around them walked to their respective vehicles. You know, Lachlan eventually said, sometimes I wonder if I'd pay more attention to your grievances if I try harder to. Maybe things will be different. Mia shook her head. Don't do it, Lachlan. Don't make my mistakes yours. It's not because you work too much or don't care enough. This is because I selfishly think only of my own desires, not the needs of our family. The responsibility for the mistake I made is all mine, not yours. It's the first time Lachlan has heard Mia take responsibility so clearly. No excuses, no explanations, just a simple acknowledgement of her behavior. This honesty has caused something in the air to change. I think we're all learning how to move on, he said, for Eliza's sake and for our own. Yes, Mia agreed. We are. As they said their goodbyes, both felt a subtle shift. Not reconciliation, not even friendship, but a mutual understanding, a recognition that they are both doing the best they can in this complex situation. Maybe that's where forgiveness begins, not forgetting or pretending there's no hurt, but recognizing that the hurt exists, but choosing not to let it define the future. For Lachlan and Mia, the future remains one of separate paths, but perhaps of paths that occasionally intersect in the lives of their shared daughters, in some shared understanding of humanity. Winter has once again descended on Alberta, and Fort McMurray is covered in snow. Almost 2 years have passed since Mia returned to town with Eliza, and life has settled into a rhythm and imperfect but acceptable arrangement that allows everyone to move on. Eliza has adapted to traveling back and forth between her two homes. Now 11, she has shown a maturity beyond her years, a wisdom that comes from an early understanding of the complexities of the adult world. She knows her parents won't get back together, but she also knows they both love her deeply. For Mia, these years have been a time of humility and rebuilding. She regained her full-time teaching position at the elementary school and rebuilt some sort of standing in the community, though she knew that some people might never forgive her for her choices. She learned to accept the judgment of others as a natural consequence of her actions. Most importantly, she learned to give without expecting anything in return. She pays child support, is never late, respects the boundaries set by Lachlan, and strives to be an active partner in Eliza's upbringing. She knows these actions can't erase the past, but hopes they can help shape a healthier future. One cold Tuesday night, Mia was in her apartment correcting her homework when the phone rang. "It's Lachlan." He sounds nervous. "It's Eliza," he said. "She's got a high fever and the doctor says it might be appendicitis. We're at the hospital. They're preparing for surgery." Mia's heart sank. "I'll be right there." When she arrives at the hospital, she finds Lachlan pacing the waiting room, anxiety written all over his face. "What's the situation?" she asked eagerly. "They took her in for tests," he replied, "and the doctor said it was clear signs of appendicitis and needed immediate surgery." "Is she scared?" "Yes, but she's brave." He paused. "She's asking for you." A few minutes later, the nurse took them to Eliza, who was already in a hospital bed, ready to go to the operating room. "Mom," she cried out when she saw Mia, fear in her voice. "I'm here, honey," Mia said soothingly, taking her daughter's hand in hers. "Everything will be fine." "I'm scared," Eliza admitted, tears glistening in her eyes. "It's okay to be scared. It's normal," Lachlan said, standing on the other side of the bed. "But the doctors know what they're doing, and Mom and I are here for you." When the paramedics came to take Eliza to the operating room, she held both parents' hands tightly. "Are you both going to be here? Together?" Mia and Lachlan looked at each other. "Yes," they said at the same time. "We're not going anywhere." It was a long couple hours. Mia and Lachlan sit in the waiting room, speaking little but sharing the kind of anxiety that only parents can understand. "Thank you for calling me." Mia finally breaks the silence. "She's your daughter," Lachlan said simply, echoing what she'd said at the hospital all those years ago. They didn't talk more, but the silence felt less tense. Both were immersed in their shared concern for their daughter. Eventually, the doctor came out and told them that the surgery was a success. The appendix was removed in time, and Eliza will recover soon. When they were allowed to see her, they found her awake, though still sleepy. "Hey, little warrior," Lachlan said softly, stroking her hair. "Ouch," she grunted, frowning slightly. "I know, honey," Mia said, "but the drugs will work soon. You are very brave." Eliza looked sleepily at her parents, who stood on either side of the hospital bed, their eyes half closed, and said, "You too." Alongside STH. "That's nice." Then she fell asleep again. Mia and Lachlan looked at each other again, and both understood the hope implicit in their daughter's words, a hope they could not fulfill. That night, Eliza needed to stay in the hospital overnight for observation. Both Mia and Lachlan refused to leave, choosing to spend an uncomfortable night in the waiting room. Lachlan broke the silence in the early hours of the morning when the hospital quieted down to the occasional footstep and the distant sound of an intercom. "You know," he said, his voice soft in the darkness, "seeing you with Eliza today made me realize something." "What?" Mia asked, waking up from her half-sleep. "No matter what you did to me, you were a good mother. Eliza loves you. She needs you. It means everything to her that you're here tonight." Mia didn't respond immediately, letting the words seep in. Eventually she said, "Thank you. But we all know that if it weren't for the stable foundation you've built in Elle, it's going to be much worse when we leave." Lachlan thought for a moment. Maybe that's what co-parenting is all about. Each contributing what we can and recognizing each other's value, even if we can't live together. This is an important moment, an acknowledgement, and perhaps the beginning of forgiveness. It's not about forgetting or reconciling. It's about accepting the mistakes of the past and the reality of the present and then moving forward. The next day, when Eliza was allowed to leave the hospital, to her surprise, her parents had come to an agreement on her rehabilitation arrangements. She will stay at Lachlan's for a week and then at Mia's apartment for another week, both parents adjusting their work schedules to care for her. "You two work together," she said in surprise as they helped her into the car. "Of course," Lachlan said. "That's what parents are supposed to do." Over the next few weeks, While Eliza recovered, Mia and Lachlan interacted more frequently and calmly than ever before. This is not the rebuilding of a friendship, but the formation of a new relationship, co-parents, allies, people who work together for the well-being of their daughter. One afternoon, when Lachlan comes to pick up Eliza, Mia hands him an envelope. Inside was a letter. "What is it?" he asked. "Something I need to say," she replied. "But it's too hard to say in person. Read it, if you will." That night, when Eliza was asleep, Lachlan opened the envelope and began to read. "Dear Lachlan," the letter reads, "there are things I have wanted to say to you for a long time, but have never found the right words or courage. First, I want to say I'm sorry, not just for leaving, but for my betrayal. I betrayed our marriage, our family, and your trust in me. There are no excuses to justify my behavior, and I won't try to make them. I also want to thank you for being Eliza's rock, for honoring my role as her mother even when I least deserved it, for not letting your anger at me interfere with your parenting. You demonstrated true strength and character for which I will be eternally grateful. I know we'll never go back to the past, and I don't expect you to forgive me. But I want you to know that I have learned a valuable lesson from my mistakes. I've learned that true love isn't about passion or novelty. It's about commitment, respect, and choosing each other every day. These are lessons I learned too late, but I hope to pass them on to Eliza. In closing, I want you to know that no matter what I do, no matter what our future relationship is, I will always be grateful for the time I once spent with you and the beautiful daughter we created. If there is an afterlife, I won't make the same mistake. Forever grateful, Mia." Lachlan put the letter down and felt a sense of calm, a sense of peace he hadn't felt in years. He doesn't know if he's fully forgiven Mia, but he does know that he's no longer bound by the past. He was ready to move on, not to forget, but with lessons, with wisdom, and with hope. Life moves on in its own way. Eliza's full recovery from her appendectomy and entry into early adolescence brought with it a whole new set of challenges and joys. For Mia and Lachlan, a new calm has formed between them since Eliza became ill. Not intimacy, but not hostility either. More like a state of mutual respect, an understanding that recognizes the importance of each other in our daughter's life. However, Fort McMurray is a small town with long memories. No matter what Mia does to make up for the past, someone always insists on reminding her of her mistakes. One day while Mia was shopping at the grocery store, she happened to overhear two women talking about her. "Have you heard? Mia Campbell is going to Eliza's parent-teacher conference with Lachlan. It's like she didn't abandon him with the baby. This is so shameless. If I were Lachlan, I'd ask her to stay out of my life." Mia has learned to ignore such comments, but they still sting. She knew that no matter how hard she tried to change, to some people, she would always be the woman who left her husband and children. Complicating the situation is the reappearance of Vance Whitaker in town. He is said to have come to a financial seminar for oil workers to offer investment opportunities. When the news reaches Mia's ears, she feels a wave of panic. She hadn't seen or heard from him in over 2 years, but just hearing his name was enough to evoke past shame and regret. She texted Lachlan to alert him that Vance was in town in case they met unexpectedly. "Thanks for the reminder," he replied. "I'll take care of it." But destiny has other plans. At Eliza's middle school science fair, Mia and Lachlan both came out to support their daughter's project. As they were listening to Eliza explain her experiment, a familiar voice came from behind. "Mia? Lachlan? What a surprise." They turned to see Vance Whitaker standing there, looking older than they remembered, but still wearing that confident smile. He looks successful in his expensive suit, though Mia knows it's probably just another elaborate facade. "Vance," Lachlan said calmly, no emotion in his tone. Mia noticed Eliza looking at the stranger in confusion, clearly not remembering the man who had played a role in her life. "I hear you're offering investment opportunities in town," Lachlan continued, his voice calm, but with an edge of steel. "Yes, indeed," Vance replied, smile unchanged. "If you're interested, I'd be happy to tell you more. I think we've had enough experience with the type of opportunity you're offering," Mia said, her voice low but firm. Vance's smile faltered a bit, but he recovered quickly. "Let bygones be bygones. I just wanted to say hi and see how you guys are doing." He looked to Eliza. This must be Eliza, grown up so much. Eliza frowned and looked to her parents for guidance. Lachlan placed a hand on his daughter's shoulder, a protective gesture. Yes, she's grown up, he said simply. And right now, if you don't mind, we're looking at our daughter's science project. Vance seems to notice the subtle rejection, but maintains a superficial charm. Sure, sure. Maybe we can catch up some other time. As he walks away, Mia feels a wave of relief, but also a sense of unease as the past rolls back into her life. Eliza looked at her parents with curiosity. Who's that? She asked. Mia and Lachlan exchange a look. Someone we used to know, Lachlan replied cautiously. Now, tell us more about your experiment. Later in the evening, as they leave the school, Mia thanks Lachlan for the way he handled the situation. Thank you for not. Tell the truth, she said. That's not a detail Eliza needs to know, he replied. At least not right now. Mia nodded, grateful. But she knows that as her daughter grows up, there will one day be more questions. A few days later, Vance reappeared, this time at Mia's school, claiming that he wanted to discuss a seminar on providing retirement plans for teachers. Mia refused to see him, but he left a business card with a personal cell phone number. She immediately tore the business card into pieces and threw it in the trash. But Vance isn't so easily dispatched. The next day, he waited for Mia in the parking lot after she got out of school. Just want to talk, he said, leaning against her car. Why so nervous? We used to be close. It was a mistake, Mia said coldly. A mistake I pay for every day. Please leave, Vance. Come on, Mia, he said with a smile, the kind that used to make her heart race and now only disgusted her. I have a new business plan that's better than ever. This time it's for real. We can start over. I've started over, Mia said, without you. Now please leave, or I will call security. Vance's smile disappeared, and a flash of anger flashed across his eyes. You owe me, Mia. I spent a lot of money for you and that baby. I owe you nothing, Mia said firmly. And her name is Eliza. Bye, Vance. Mia felt a chill run through her as Vance left. She knew he wasn't the type to give up easily, especially if he thought he had something to gain or lose. She considers telling Lachlan about the encounter, but worries that it will ruin the calm relationship they've worked so hard to establish. She finally decides to deal with the issue herself, hoping that Vance will understand her rejection and leave town. But Vance has other plans. Lachlan Campbell was in his office checking data on oil sands extraction efficiency when his cell phone rang. The screen shows an unknown number. Normally, he would ignore these types of calls, but his gut tells him to answer. Mr. Campbell? A woman's voice asked. I'm the receptionist at the Horizon Hotel. A Mr. Whitaker has asked me to inform you that he is in our bar and has something he would like to discuss with you regarding your ex-wife and daughter. Lachlan's fingers tightened around the phone. Did he say exactly what it was about? No, sir. Only that it was something that would interest you. Lachlan felt a pang of unease. He should have just ignored the invitation altogether and gone on with his day. But the mention of Mia and Eliza made him think long and hard. If Vance was going to hurt them in some way, he needed to know. Thank you, he said to the receptionist. Please tell him I'll be there in an hour. Lachlan walked into the bar at the Horizon Hotel to find Vance sitting at a table in the corner with a glass of whiskey in front of him. Lachlan walked straight over, but didn't sit down. What do you want, Whitaker? He asked, his voice low and calm. Vance waved him down. Please, Lachlan. I promise this will work in your favor. Out of an abundance of caution, Lachlan takes a seat across the room, but stays alert. Say it. I saw how well you and Mia got along at the science fair, Vance began, taking a sip of his drink. Almost like a happy couple. If that's why you called me here, then I'm going to go, Lachlan said, getting ready to get up. No, Vance said hastily. I called you here to give you a warning. Lachlan stopped moving. What warning? About Mia, Vance said, his voice suddenly serious. She may have convinced you that she's changed, but believe me, she hasn't. You don't know anything about Mia, Lachlan said calmly. Now her. I know more than you think, Vance retorted. Did you know she contacted me a lot when she was in Vancouver? Even after she got back here. Lachlan's expression stays the same, but inside he begins to waver. You're lying. Vance removed a sheaf of papers from the inside pocket of his jacket. These are screenshots of text messages and emails. She contacted me to inquire about investment opportunities and to discuss the relationship we once had. She even mentioned possibly meeting me again. Lachlan scanned the so-called evidence. On the surface, These do look like Mia's messages, using her usual expressions. But something doesn't feel right. These are easy to fake, he noted. Vance shrugged. Maybe. But ask yourself, why am I doing this? I just wanted to warn you because I think you're too nice a guy to be tricked twice. I think you have other motives, Lachlan replied, staring into Vance's eyes. It might have something to do with money. Vance's smile twitches slightly. I admit, Mia and I have some unresolved financial issues. But this isn't about that. It's about doing the right thing. The right thing, Lachlan repeated, skepticism in his voice. Vance leaned forward. Look, here's the deal. Mia owed me a ton of money, loans, investment losses, living expenses while we were in Vancouver. Help me get this money back, and I'll be out of your lives forever. Otherwise, who knows? Maybe I'll decide to settle in this town for a while. Lachlan looked at the man and felt a sharp pang of disgust. It's a naked attempt at blackmail, with threats against Mia and exploitation of his past hurts. How much do you want? He asked calmly. $50,000. Vance answered immediately. It's a reasonable number, considering everything. Lachlan stood up. I'll think about it. Don't take too long, Vance warned. I'm presenting to the seminar tomorrow, and we'll be meeting a lot of people from the town, including Eliza's teachers. Imagine if they heard some funny stories about Mia. Lachlan didn't respond and simply left the bar. As soon as he stepped out of the hotel, he took out his cell phone and dialed a number, not for Mia, but for his old friend Connor, an officer with the Fort McMurray Police Department. Hey Connor, I need your help, he said. I may be in a blackmail situation. Meanwhile, Mia is in her apartment correcting her homework when there's a knock on the door. She thought it was the delivery man, but found Vance standing in her doorway. How did you find this place? She asked, not inviting him in. Small town, remember? He smiled. I just need to ask a few questions. You need to leave, Mia said firmly. I've made it clear that I don't want any more contact with you. Even though I might have to make a deal with your ex-husband? Vance asked, smile widening. Mia felt a pang of fear. What deal? Oh, nothing special. Just some information exchange about your past. He seemed interested. You're lying, Mia said, but there was a hint of uncertainty in her voice. Are you sure? Vance asked rhetorically. He seems to be very willing to work for some. Pay for impressive information. Possibly about our time in Vancouver. Maybe I should tell him how you planned to leave, weeks before you wrote that note. Mia felt a wave of panic. She did start planning it weeks before she left, something she never admitted to Lachlan. If he learns of this, their hard-earned trust may break down again. What do you really want, Vance? She asked, her voice quivering. Same as I asked Lachlan, he replied. $50,000. That's what you owe me. I don't owe you anything, Mia said angrily. Everything you've promised me has been a lie. You lied to me and manipulated me. Maybe, Vance admitted. But you volunteered, didn't you? No one is forcing you to leave your husband and your cozy little life. Mia stood there, stung by his words. He's right, and that's the worst part. No matter how much Vance manipulates her, the ultimate decision is hers to make. I don't have that kind of money, she said finally. Then find a way to get it, Vance said coolly. Otherwise, I'm sure the town would be very interested in the real story behind this repentant mother. When he left, Mia closed the door and leaned against it, feeling a surge of fear and anger. She doesn't want Vance to ruin her life again, but she doesn't know how to get out of this situation either. She hesitated for a moment, then picked up her cell phone and dialed Lachlan's number. Whatever the consequences, she knew she needed to be honest. No more secrets this time. After 3 rings, Lachlan picked up the phone. Mia? What's going on? We need to talk, she said, her voice strained. It's about Vance. He just came by my apartment. I know, Lachlan said calmly. He approached me too. Mia was silent for a moment in surprise. He told you what? He tried to blackmail me with supposed information about you. He wants $50,000. Mia took a deep breath. He asked me for the same amount. Lachlan, there's something I need to tell you before he has a chance to twist the truth. We'd better talk face to face, Lachlan replied. Can you come to my house? In half an hour. 40 minutes later, Mia was sitting in Lachlan's kitchen with an untouched cup of tea in front of her. It was the first time she'd entered this former home since she'd left. The house had changed: new couches, new wall colors, some artwork she didn't recognize. But it still feels familiar, a place she once called home. What did he say? Lachlan asked, sitting across from her. Mia took a deep breath. He threatened to tell you how I planned ahead to leave. It's true. I started preparing weeks before I left that note. She paused and saw Lachlan's expression turn serious. There's more. I asked Natalie for help and asked her not to tell you about Vance. I I betrayed you before I left, not just in my actions, but in my heart. Lachlan sat quietly, digesting the information. Eventually, he said, I already knew that. Mia looked up in shock. What? Natalie told me everything after you left. He explained. The things you planned in advance, your relationship with Vance, all of it. The private investigator just confirmed the details. So, why do you look disappointed now? Because even after all this time, even after I've shown some level of forgiveness, you're still not being completely honest, Lachlan said. I've been waiting for you to tell me these things yourself, instead of hiding them. Mia lowered her head as shame flooded her. You're right. I should have told you earlier. I just fear. The fear of losing everything we've built. The fear that you'll hate me even more. I never hated you, Mia, Lachlan sighed. I hate your behavior. I hate your choices, but not you as a person. The words made tears well up in Mia's eyes. I don't deserve your kindness. It's not about being worthy, Lachlan said. It's about doing the right thing for Eliza. Now, tell me what Vance really wants. Mia explains Vance's blackmail attempts and how he threatened to spread rumors about her around town that could affect her job and Eliza. I've called the police, Lachlan told her. Connor is on it. He says it's clear blackmail, but we need proof. Do you think Vance will be that easily intimidated? Mia asked skeptically. No, Lachlan admitted. That's why we need a plan. The next morning, Vance received a text from Lachlan agreeing to meet to discuss payment details. They were meeting at a small, secluded cafe just outside of town, unlikely to have acquaintances present. Vance arrives to see Lachlan sitting alone at a corner table with an envelope in his hand. Wise decision, Vance said, sliding into his seat. Here's $10,000 in cash, Lachlan said, pushing over the envelope. The rest will take some time to arrange. Vance opened the envelope and counted the bills. This is just the beginning, he warned. Before I give you the rest of the money, I need to confirm what you said about Mia, Lachlan said. I need proof that she's still contacting you these days. Vance laughed. Smart. But unfortunately, I don't have that evidence with me. I'll bring it to the next meeting. No more money then, Lachlan said calmly. Vance's smile disappeared. Look, Campbell, no tricks. I could make your ex-wife's life a living hell. The whole town will know what a dash. Be careful what you say next, Lachlan interrupted, his voice low and dangerous. Vance stares at him for a moment, then shrugs. Whatever. The point is, I have information she doesn't want anyone to know. It's worth $50,000. What a coincidence, came a voice from a nearby table. We also have some information you don't want people to know. Vance turned to see Connor sitting there in civilian clothes, badge in hand. What is it? Vance questioned, looking to Lachlan. This is the evidence we caught you blackmailing, Lachlan said calmly. The whole conversation was videotaped. Vance stood up. You can't prove anything. Actually, we could, Connor said, standing up as well. We have Lachlan's records, security footage of you leaving the Horizon Hotel, and a security camera outside Mia's apartment that caught you harassing her. That's enough to get you into trouble, Mr. Whitaker. Vance's face turned pale. It's just a misunderstanding. Put the money back in the envelope, Connor ordered. That's the marked bill that was used as evidence. Vance looked at the envelope and then at the exit, as if considering whether to run. Eventually, he put the money back in the envelope and slowly pushed it toward Lachlan. I suggest you leave town, Connor said. Today, if I ever see you near Mr. or Mrs. Campbell again, I will arrest you for harassment and extortion. Vance looks like he wants to fight it, but eventually nods. Okay, there's nothing worth keeping in this shitty town anyway. Lachlan breathed a long sigh of relief as he left the cafe. Do you think he'll stop there? Maybe, maybe not, Connor replied. But now he knows we're watching him, and that should make him think twice. Meanwhile, Mia is at school nervously waiting for any news. She felt a wave of relief when Lachlan's text arrived, processed. Vance should be gone. I'll call you later to explain. After school in the afternoon, she walks to the parking lot with Eliza, realizing that this is a turning point in her life. The mistakes she had made could never be completely erased, But perhaps now she could truly begin to move forward without the constant threat of the shadows of the past reappearing. "Mom, can we order pizza tonight?" Eliza asked, interrupting her thoughts. "Of course, dear," Mia said with a smile, feeling a sense of relief that had been missing for a long time. But just as they were walking toward the car, a familiar figure stopped her in her tracks. Vance stood beside her car with a look on his face she'd never seen before, a dangerous anger mixed with frustration. "Mom, who's that?" Eliza asked, uneasiness revealing itself in her voice. "It's that Mr. Whitaker," Mia replied in a low voice, her heart racing. "Eliza, I want you to back away slowly and go to MS. Robert's okay? Just tell her I need help." "But Mom—" "Now, Eliza," Mia said firmly, nudging her daughter's shoulder. When Eliza leaves, Mia turns to Vance and tries to stay calm. "You shouldn't be here. Officer Connor warned you." "Yeah, about that," Vance said, his voice dangerously calm. "I don't like being threatened, Mia. I don't like being screwed either." "No one's fooling you," Mia said, noticing his hands in his pockets. "You tried to blackmail us and got caught. It's that simple." "Nothing is simple," Vance growled, taking a step forward. "I wasted 2 years of my life because of you. 2 years. I could have been with anyone, but I chose you and your troublesome children. And how do you repay me? Escape back into the arms of your ex-husband." "I didn't go back into Lachlan's arms," Mia said, looking around cautiously, hoping someone had noticed the situation. "I came back to give Eliza a stable life." "Don't mention the boy's name," Vance suddenly yelled, drawing the attention of several parents who were leaving the school. "It's all because of her. Without her, you would have stayed in Vancouver with me." Mia felt a surge of anger come over her. "Don't blame this on a child. It's about your lies, your manipulations, your failed schemes. You ruined my marriage, Vance, but I won't let you destroy the life I have now." Vance's eyes turned cold. "It's too late." At that very moment, he pulled something out of his pocket. Mia instinctively backed away, thinking it was a weapon, but instead, he pulled out a flash drive. "Know what this is?" he asked, waving the flash drive. "Here's proof of everything you did in Vancouver. Our relationship, the real reason you left your husband, the text messages where you're begging me to take you away. Everything. I'm going to copy it to everyone in town, starting with the parents of your baby girl's classmates." Mia felt a surge of fear, but then realized the void behind the threat. "You don't have that kind of evidence," she said, suddenly convinced. "If you had it, you would have used it to blackmail us long ago instead of making up those fake screenshots." The look on Vance's face confirmed her suspicions. "You can't be sure." "I can," Mia said, a new surge of confidence. "And I'm not afraid of you anymore, Vance. No matter what you say or do, you can't hurt me anymore. I've faced my mistakes and taken responsibility. Can you say the same thing?" Her words seemed to sting Vance, his face twisting into a mask of rage. "You think you're better than me? You betrayed your husband and abandoned your family. You're as bad as I am, Mia." "Maybe I was," Mia admits, "but I'm trying to get better. And you just continue to deceive and manipulate people." She turned to leave, but Vance grabbed her arm. "We're not done yet. Let her go," a voice commanded. The two turned to see Lachlan standing there with a dangerous glint in his eye. Behind him, Connor was walking toward them, one hand on his holster. Vance looks at his situation and realizes he's trapped. Slowly, he let go of Mia's arm. "You won, Campbell," he said, the bitterness of defeat in his voice. "You get the girl, you get the kid, you get everything. You fucking won." "It's not a contest," Lachlan said, walking over to Mia. "Leave now and never come back." Vance stared at them for a long moment, then turned toward his car. But before getting into the car, he turned around with a strange expression on his face. "You know what's ironic?" he said to Mia. "You could have had it all. In Vancouver. With me. If you just hang in there a little while longer, all those investments will start to pay off. Now you've lost your chance." Mia shook her head and looked sadly at the man, who was still living in his own fantasy. "Bye, Vance." Vance Whitaker left Fort McMurray accompanied by Connor, but the shadow he left behind still lingers. His presence opens old scars that Mia and Lachlan have worked hard to heal, bringing new questions and a need to talk. Later that night, after making sure Eliza stayed safely at a friend's house for the night, Mia and Lachlan sat in the kitchen of his home and discussed the day's events. Is it true what he said about investing? Lachlan asked, pushing a cup of tea towards Mia. She shook her head. No, that's just another lie. Vance is always immersed in the next big plan, but never puts it into practice. Those investments, if they exist at all, exist only in his imagination. Lachlan nods, thoughtfully. You know, when I saw him grab your arm today, I felt a protectiveness that I thought no longer existed. Mia looked up in surprise. Really? Yes, he admitted. No matter what happened, no matter how deep the past hurt, seeing someone threaten you still provokes a reaction in me. I think that says something. What does it say? Mia asked softly. Lachlan considered it for a moment. Shows that despite everything, I still care about you. Not as a wife, but as Eliza's mom, as someone important in my life. These words stirred mixed emotions in Mia's mind. Not a romantic hope she'd long since given up on that idea, but a calm acceptance. A comfort in knowing that she wasn't completely abandoned. Thank you, she said. Not just for today, but for everything. For how you've handled this whole situation, how you've treated Eliza, and even how you've treated me, even though I don't deserve it. It's not about being worthy, Mia. Lachlan repeated what he'd said earlier. It's about doing the right thing. For Eliza and for ourselves. They sat in silence for a while, sipping tea and contemplating the winding journey of the past few years. Do you think he'll come back? Mia eventually asked. I don't think he dares, Lachlan replied. Connor warned him that he would face blackmail and harassment charges if he showed up again. But if he does come back, we'll deal with it. No more secrets, no more lies. Mia nodded, grateful for his use of the word we, even if only as co-parents. I feel like I need to tell Eliza more about what happened, she said. Not all the details, but enough for her to understand why the stranger was at school today and why we were so vigilant. I agree, Lachlan said. She's getting older and noticing more and more. The topic will come up eventually. The next day, they sat down together to talk to Eliza, carefully explaining who Vance was and the role he played in their lives, without going into too much detail, but enough for her to understand the basics. They explained that he was now gone and would not bother them again, but that if she saw him again, she should tell them immediately. Eliza has accepted this information with amazing maturity. So he's the guy you went to Vancouver with? She asked Mia. Yes, Mia admitted, preparing for possible accusations. But Eliza just nodded. I barely remember him. I just remember not being too happy in Vancouver and missing my dad. The words pierced Mia's heart like a knife, but she forced herself to accept the pain. This was a consequence of her choices, and she needed to face that fact. I'm so sorry, honey, she said, her voice breaking. I'm sorry I took you away from Dad and put you through that. To her surprise, Eliza leaned over and hugged her. It's okay, Mom. Dad says sometimes people make mistakes, but it's important that we learn from them. Mia looks to Lachlan, amazed at the wisdom and tolerance he has taught her daughter. He just smiled slightly and shrugged as if to say it was obvious. Over the next few weeks, life slowly returned to normal. Vance's appearance becomes a thing of the past, an episode that has been dealt with. But the truths and emotions it reveals continue to affect the relationship between Mia and Lachlan in a way that strangely makes it more real and more honest. As spring approaches, the community prepares for the upcoming annual charity run to raise money for local schools. Mia spent a lot of time preparing for this event as part of the organizing committee. It was a way for her to regain her footing in the community, a way to show her commitment and dedication. The day before the event, while helping set up route markers at the school stadium, she noticed Lachlan walking across the parking lot with another woman. They seemed close, their conversation interspersed with laughter. This is Sarah Matthews, the new doctor at the local clinic, who has been in town for a few months. Mia felt a strange wave of emotion come over her, not jealousy, but more like a sadness at the realization that life did go on. Lachlan has every right to move on and find new happiness. In fact, he should. But seeing the actual evidence of this still left her with a sense of loss, a reminder of all that she had given up. When Lachlan noticed her, he waved at her and then walked over with Sarah in tow. Hi, Mia, he greeted. How is everything prepared? It's going well, she replied, forcing herself to smile. Hi, Sarah, good to see you. You too, Sarah said with a warm smile. Lachlan told me you were organizing the event. It was fantastic. Just doing what I can to help, Mia says modestly. The three of them stood there awkwardly until Lachlan broke the silence. Sarah and I were just about to go to lunch. Do you need help completing these markings? It was a kind offer, Mia knew, but she shook her head. No, I'm almost done. You guys go enjoy your lunch. As they left, Mia felt a strange calm. It's great to see Lachlan moving on with his life and finding new happiness. That's exactly what he deserves after everything she's brought him. Later in the evening, while Eliza spends the night at Lachlan's, Mia sits alone in her apartment, reflecting on her journey. She leaves Fort McMurray in search of a better life, only to find that everything she sought was hollow. And what she truly cherished, family, security, love, she had when she left. She pulled out an album of old photos and looked through pictures of her and Lachlan's wedding, pictures of Eliza's birth, pictures of them as a family. It was a life she could never regain, a life that was gone forever because of her choices. Her so-called punishment is not something imposed on her by Lachlan, but is the natural consequence of her own behavior. Lost trust, lost time, lost love, none of which can be easily restored. As she wiped the tears from her eyes, Mia realized that this was the best she could get. Eliza has two loving parents, and Lachlan has found a way to move forward, even as she rebuilds her life herself. The past can never be changed, but the future can still be meaningful and rewarding. And that, she thought, might be the most important lesson of all, that our choices shape our lives, and that some mistakes can't be fixed, only accepted. But even in the bleakest moments, there is still the possibility of moving forward, of redemption, even if it is imperfect. Final chapter. A year later in the spring, Fort McMurray experienced a season of change. Eliza is now 12 years old and about to enter middle school. Lachlan and Sarah's relationship has gotten so serious that people are starting to speculate if there will be an engagement. And Mia has earned tenure at the school and is considering buying a small house instead of continuing to rent an apartment. On the surface, everything is moving in the right direction. The trio's co-parenting arrangement is working well, Eliza is thriving, and the community seems to have forgiven, or at least forgotten, the drama of the past. But beneath the surface, unresolved emotions remain. Mia still struggles with guilt, and Lachlan is still sometimes haunted by memories of the past. And now, an unexpected piece of news upsets their carefully established equilibrium. Have you heard? Natalie asked Mia after school one day. Vance Whitaker was arrested in Calgary. It's all over the papers. Mia's heart stopped a beat. What? Investment fraud, Natalie explained. Apparently, he's been running some sort of Ponzi scheme promising non-existent returns. There are dozens of victims. Mia immediately searched the news online when she got home. Sure enough, Vance's photo appeared on the Calgary Herald's website in an article detailing how his scam defrauded investors of millions of dollars. It mentions that he has a history of similar scams in the past, but always managed to avoid the authorities. Until now. That same night, she received a text from Lachlan. See the news? I think we should talk. They meet at a cafe where Eliza is attending a slumber party at a friend's house. Lachlan brought printouts of news articles. He could face 10 years in prison, he said, pointing to the article. It looks like he's been running these scams. Mia felt a complex mix of emotions release because Vance had finally paid for his behavior, sadness because she had been caught in his lies, and a touch of fear. If the media starts digging deeper, they might find out about our connection, she said worriedly. This could have an impact on Eliza. Lachlan considered the possibility. We must be prepared for that. If reporters start poking around, we need a unified narrative about how he's cheating on you and how we're going to deal with the situation. Mia appreciated his use of the word we, showing that he was prepared to face this potential challenge with her. Do you think he'll try to drag me down with him? As revenge? Probably, Lachlan said honestly. But we have police records of his extortion attempts. We can use those if we need to. They discussed the possibilities and coping strategies, how to protect Eliza, and how to deal with problems that may arise. Throughout the conversation, Mia once again sensed Lachlan's steadiness and rationality, qualities that had once stifled her, but for which she now felt so grateful. You know, Mia said as they were getting ready to leave. Sometimes I wonder if I could go back in time and tell myself then that she had everything she needed. Lachlan looked at her with a complicated expression. I had a similar thought. If I could have sensed your dissatisfaction earlier, If I could have paid more attention to, maybe things would be different. No, Mia said firmly. I told you it's not your fault. It was entirely my choice, my mistake. You're a good husband, Lachlan. You'll make a great husband for Sarah, if you get that far. Lachlan looks a little surprised. Have you heard anything? Mia smiled and shook her head. No, just a guess. I can tell you guys are happy. I'm happy for you, really. He was silent for a moment, then said softly, Thank you. It means a lot to me. A few days later, Mia is finishing up her new little house, a two-bedroom house not far from the Lachlans that allows Eliza to commute between the two homes with ease when she receives an unexpected letter. Official letter from the Calgary police asking her to testify in the case of Vance Whitaker. Apparently, investigators have tracked his activities in northern Alberta, including his seminars and investment programs. They discovered the hoax he tried to perpetrate in Fort McMurray and his blackmail attempts on Mia and Lachlan. Mia sat at the new kitchen table and stared at the letter. Testifying means publicizing her past mistakes, which could cause new gossip in a life she's just beginning to rebuild. But it could also mean closure, a way to openly confront the past and make sure Vance can't hurt anyone else. She picked up the phone and dialed Lachlan's number. I got a letter from the Calgary police, she explained. They want me to testify against Vance. I got it too, he replied. What are you going to do? Mia took a deep breath. I think I should testify, not only for us, but for the others he deceived. But it means our story may be public. I know, Lachlan said. I was thinking about the same thing. What about Eliza? We'll protect her, he assured. We will explain to her what is going to happen and make sure she is supported. They decide to get together the next day to talk to Eliza and explain what's coming up and why it's important to them. As Mia hangs up the phone, she thinks about the irony of her own journey, the fact that she once left this town in search of bigger and better things, following a man who ultimately proved to be a fraud. Now she's back, facing her mistakes and ready to publicly take responsibility for her role. It wasn't the life she'd once dreamed of, but it had an honest value, a sense of reality she'd once ignored. The next day, when they sat down with Eliza to explain the situation, the girl was surprised to receive the news. So he's a bad guy, she summarized, ripping off a lot of people. Yes, Mia admitted. Including me. I fell for his lies and then made the decision to hurt you and Dad. Eliza thought for a moment. But you realized your mistake and came back. Isn't that the most important part? Mia and Lachlan exchanged a surprised look, once again struck by their daughter's intelligence. Yes, dear, Lachlan said, with pride in his voice. Recognizing mistakes and trying to fix them is the most important thing. 2 weeks later, Mia sat on the witness stand in a Calgary courtroom and recounted her experiences with Vance Whitaker, how he convinced her to leave her family, how his promises of business opportunities turned out to be lies, and how he ultimately tried to blackmail her and Lachlan. Instead of hiding her responsibility or mistakes, she candidly admits her role and subsequent remorse. Lachlan also testified, describing Vance's extortion attempts and how they worked with the police to stop him. Connor provided official records that corroborated their account. As they left the courtroom, several reporters tried to approach them. Lachlan stands protectively beside Mia as they make their way through the crowd. All we're asking for is privacy, he told reporters. For our daughter. However, as they feared, the story went to press. The Fort McMurray Herald ran a brief article the next day mentioning 2 local residents who testified against the famous liar. While the article doesn't detail their personal histories, the townspeople were able to fill in the blanks. The next few weeks are going to be tough for Mia. She noticed some of the parents at school looking at her differently and heard more whispers. But at the same time, there are voices of support. Some appreciated her courage in coming forward to testify and confront her past. You did the right thing, Natalie told her one day after school. It takes courage to stand up for yourself. I just hope this doesn't affect Eliza negatively, Mia says worriedly. That girl is stronger than any of us, Natalie assured. Plus she's got you and Lachlan on her side. She'll be fine. It turns out Natalie was right. Despite the inevitable gossip, Eliza handled it well and was supported by her friends and teachers. The case is moving quickly. With the testimony of numerous victims and a mountain of evidence, Vance was quickly convicted and received 12 years in prison, nearly the maximum sentence. He was also ordered to pay compensation to all the victims, even though everyone knew the money might never be fully recovered. For Mia, The verdict brought a strange sense of relief, not because of vengeance or justice, but because it represented closure, the ultimate end of that messy chapter in her life. The weekend after the verdict, Lachlan, Sarah, and Eliza had dinner at Mia's new house, which had become an occasional tradition, showing that all of them were working hard to create a harmonious extended family for Eliza. After dinner, while Sarah and Eliza did the dishes in the kitchen, Lachlan and Mia sat on the small backyard patio. "So it's finally over," Lachlan said, watching the setting sun cast long shadows over the distant treetops. "Yes," Mia agreed. "It feels like some kind of end, but also some kind of new beginning." They sat quietly for a while, enjoying a rare moment of peace. "You know," Lachlan said eventually, "I forgive you. It's not just talk, it's real forgiveness." Mia looked at him in surprise. "What made you change your mind?" Lachlan thought for a moment. "Not a specific thing. It could be time. It could be seeing your courage in confronting Vance. It could be seeing what you've done for Eliza. Or maybe it's just realizing that continuing to hold on to past hurts doesn't do any of us any good." "You have no idea what this means to me," Mia whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. "I think I know," he replied softly, "because I feel the same relief. Forgiveness is not for you, Mia. It's for myself. For me to actually move on." When Sarah and Eliza joined them, the four sat together and watched the sun slowly sink into the horizon. Mia looks at her daughter, her ex-husband, and the woman who accepted her daughter, and feels a calm acceptance. It wasn't the life she'd ever dreamed of, but it was beautiful and real in its own way. Life rarely goes according to our plans. Sometimes we make choices that ruin everything, and sometimes we trust people we shouldn't. But true growth comes from facing those mistakes, taking responsibility for them, and making amends wherever possible. Certain hurts can never be fully healed, certain trusts can never be fully restored, but there is still the possibility of moving forward, of forgiveness, even for oneself. As Mia looks at this imperfect but true picture of her family, she thinks of the words written in the note she left for Lachlan. "I'll be back in a few years." She did return, but found that everything had changed. She can't go back in time and erase her choices, but she can build a meaningful existence in this new reality, cherishing the connections she still has and embracing what she's lost. Perhaps this is true redemption, not everything going back to the way it was, but finding the strength to move forward from mistakes and create a different but still rewarding future. A future based on honesty, responsibility, and acceptance, not fantasy and escapism. For Mia Campbell, that future is enough. Not a perfect fairy tale ending, but a real, hard-won reconciliation with her past, with her choices, and most of all, with herself. As the sun disappears completely below the horizon, they walk back inside together, not as a family in the traditional sense, but as people who have weathered the storm and found peace on the other side. Separated but connected, scarred but healed, each on their own path, but in a way that allows all to move forward. That's what Mia's return brings. Not a return to the past, as she once expected, but a new beginning, a chance to face honestly all that life brings, whether it be joy or sorrow, success or failure. In the midst of the deepest despair, after the greatest mistakes, there is still hope. There is redemption. There is a new path to be discovered. It's a truth she now understands, a lesson she wants her daughter to always remember. Our choices shape our lives, and we must take responsibility for those choices. But even in the darkest moments, there is always a way to move forward. There is always a way to find your way home, even if home has changed shape. That's the end of today's story. For more captivating tales, hit subscribe and never miss an episode.